Next slide, please, Matthew. Awesome. Okay, so this was our charge. We had three charges, so I thought I should just kind of share these again here. So we shared with commission at the hearing in September, but we had three questions we were set out to consider in 2025. Who can bring an application for consideration? And I want to make 100% clear that only Oregon-based governments can bring an application for consideration of a culturally significant landscape feature. All other parties, terminated tribes, tribes in other state, recognized in other states, um, other culturally specific groups can appeal to a local government to consider an application. Um, so we did make that revision during this rulemaking process that you all were um, a part of. So I won't spend too much time there. On the next slide. And then how we remember this legislative versus quasi judicial. And because of that legal precedent, the Supreme Court case, we've left it as is and silent on this matter. Well, our guidance may say we think these are legislative, but in certain cases, they could be quasi judicial, as we've discussed. Next slide. And then new section 7 on Metro's urban growth boundary amendments. Thank you to Katie and Glenn and Metro staff and Laura Kelly, our regional representative for the Portland Metro area. Thank you for this new section, which properly straightens out what Metro's role would be versus the receiving local government. Next slide, please. And I just want to go over a few key dates here, and we'll post these slides as well on the RAC 4 meeting page on the rulemaking website if anyone wants them later. But consultation and public comment, of course, is continuing through the end of the month at 11:55 p.m. Please do not email us at 11:56 or 11:57, which would be something I would do, being deadline driven. So please back it up an hour or so and send the email a little bit earlier in the evening. Commission is scheduled to deliberate, and possibly adopt at their meeting in December. And we are recommending an effective date of that full year out to allow local governments and tribes and us all to provide the guidance and update protocols to support these rules. We held a hearing in September in Klamath Falls. And I want to again pay a particular shout out to the Klamath tribes, whose chairman Ray and council member Ellsworth Lang came over to Running Y and provided kind of comment and testimony, if you will, on the perspective of the Klamath tribe. So that was the only party that signed up to testify. We have received other written comments that I will just share you a screenshot of where those are being logged. Want to point out a couple of important sessions for those that might be going to the Oregon chapter of the American Planning Association conference this week. That is being hosted in partnership with Western Planner and also the National APA Indigenous and Tribal Planning Division. So that's auspicious, and really appreciate folks, all the panels look amazing, but I want to point out a couple. On the 16th, on Thursday, after the welcome, Governor of Kotek's Tribal Affairs Director Shana Radford, who you've seen in these meetings, is facilitating a panel on the context and strategies for protection of cultural and archaeological resources. And J.D. Tovey, the CEO and Chief Administrator of the Confederate Tribes of Umatilla, will give some remarks there. And then John Pauley, state archaeologist, will present, and also Dr. Bullion, RAC member Bullion, who's here today from the Legislative Commission on Indian Services, will also present. And if we do have representative from the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs that morning, they'll be welcome on that panel as well. The reason we didn't propose a panel on Goal 5 is when the applications were due, we would have been outside the public comment period, but then we moved it based on receiving comments from Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, and it's now kind of encompasses the conference. And there's another great panel. Committee member Ed Sullivan has put together a panel on the 17th, on Friday at 9 a.m., and that's called Honoring the Past and Planning for the Future: Tribal Resources in Oregon Land Use. Ed will be moderating and facilitating, and Robin Hayakawa with the Central Oregon Land Watch are the lead presenters there, with Gordon Howard, who's here today. Thank you, Gordon, and also Ellen Grover, the Confederative Tribes of Warm Springs Legal Counsel. So a couple good presentations there later this week. And then we have our final implementation webinar for local governments on October 29th from 3 to 5. So I really want to thank Alexandra and the League of Oregon Cities and also Brandon from Association of Oregon Counties for co-sponsoring this series and helping us get the word out. We're very grateful. Those discussions have been good. Okay, next slide, please, Matthew. Thank you. So to the meat of the matter, not well, there are two significant changes we want to flag. So between our last RAC meeting and the September 1st Secretary of State notice, based on some really good comments from RAC member Ed Sullivan, we removed 3A, and that was regarding archaeological sites being made an automatic part of a local government's inventory. And we saw Mr. Sullivan's point, which is that that's not discoverable, as those are held in confidence over at SHPO. Probably not necessary to like double protect them by making them an automatic element of a local government's comprehensive plan. So that piece is actually struck, and you can see that in our packet. The packet for today has that compare versions of the rule in 2024 versus the Secretary of State posting in 2025. And that strikeout is actually at the bottom of page 20. I know I had some other ideas about possibly bringing that back in some limited cases, but we've heard other testimony that from Kimberly, thank you, Ms. Fitzgerald, from the City of Salem, that really keeping, the inventory and protection well, stop there. I think I have another note. I think I'm confusing my notes here. So I'll just leave that on 3A, and removing archaeological sites as an automatic part of a local government's inventory. Again, public comments, consultation and comments still open. So if folks have concerns about that, about that elimination, please let us know. But we think it stands strong without it under protection of, state rules for archaeological sites. And then also in conversations with Jill, and also harkening back to conversations with here about the City of Portland and others who have programs that basically mirror this structure, and particularly Coos County's protection. So in 9A is recognizes that 9B. Forgive me here. Let's see. Let me just make sure, because I think it's actually 9A. I might have a typo on my slide there. Draft. Let's see if I'm looking at the compare version. And there's 9. Yeah, it's 9A, forgive me. Matthew, I'll send an update of this slide before we post it to the web. So it's 9A, but it recognizes that if a local government, had a protection program in place before January 1, 2025, that it's substantially the same, then folks don't need to redo their program or re-update their program. So thanks, Jill, for kind of working through us with that on that. For sure, Katie. Yeah, why don't we pause there and hear from Katie, please? Thanks.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt the overview that you're giving right now.
That's good. It's a good place to stop because of that section. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate other folks on the rack humoring my questions through this whole process, because I'm not a planner or land use expert like you all are. My question is, what is the other mechanism or process that local governments would be utilizing to understand that they have a recorded archaeological site in the land use activities that they're implementing, so that it's safe for us to remove 3A from this rule? I guess I'm just wondering, is there in fact a process they're going through regularly where that is information they do discover but protect and consider in land use processes? And or like was what was struck actually a duplication of a different process that's already happening?
Well, thank you, Katie. That is great. And I'm not, it's a very fair question. And I'm not sure we have even the response completely worked out. The thought about removing 3A is that indeed they are, archaeological resources are protected under statute and rule for archaeological resources under kind of SHPO's suite of rules and regs. But this is one thing that Ed has been noting, and be happy for him to come on and explain to us all if he'd like, but that there may be ways to crosswalk that a little bit more carefully, and would welcome people's written comment on that. We were compelled when Ed pointed out that because those are confidential, that the land use inventory may not be the place for them. But it's up for I would say it's up for further discussion. I don't see John here, Polly, but it's a very fair question and open for further discussion. Ed, I'm not sure if you'd like to add anything here.
I'm going to be quiet because I'm in a library, but the whole idea is how do you know when the whole inventory is not available for public view?
Right.
Uh, it's a very hard thing to do. So, what I think the department is recommending is that we'll take care of this off the uh, the comprehensive plan inventory, and we'll put all our eggs in the basket of the application and the information that arises from that application from Aura or from some other source that there's an archaeological resource there. Uh,
Mhm.
by pretending that we've got these things already done in an inventory, uh, we don't help the process.
Mhm.
These are probably going to happen because somebody finds it uh, in the course of making a development application. So
Mhm.
it's a better way to handle it under the existing state process.
Mhm. 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 And thank you, and thanks for phoning in from Quiet Place. And Katie, thanks for the question. I think I'd love to put a pin in that. Um, I'd say that is how we've done that and how we can do it better, at least in guidance, if not in rule, definitely deserves some more work. Because planners aren't trained on any, I would venture to say almost any of this in school. So the definitely guidance is warranted, if not a little bit of a crosswalk in the rule. Katie, anything else there? And really great question.
Oh, thank you. But I see Sarah has her hand up too. Maybe she's got
Great.
something on this.
Nice. Please, Sarah, welcome.
Well, I wanted to thank you, Katie, for the question because that's kind of what I'm wondering too. I had sort of thought that we were going to, and maybe there's a mechanism for this that I don't understand, and if so, I hope that someone will help me with it a bit. Because I had thought that one of our efforts with this was to get to a point when we get to where we develop the implementation tools. I had been under the impression that one of our big goals for that was to get us out of this situation that we've been in Oregon for a long time, where we do have that expectation that people under the law will not be impacting archaeological resources, but we don't have any way for them to know that they're doing that. And I had sort of thought that was one of our big goals
Mhm.
in this process. So I'm
Mhm.
hoping that we can make sure that we don't lose that because to me that's one of the big reasons for us to revisit goal 5 at all
Mhm.
is to get people especially property owners and developers kind of out of this trap where they don't have enough information and nobody has enough information to make informed decisions.
Mhm.
And I had thought that the plan was that we would do this and then come up with some data anonymizing tools during the implementation process. So, um, but maybe there's a path into that is not entirely clear to me.
Mhm. Sarah, thank you. I mean, this is a really good discussion. Um, Sarah, your idea of data anonymizing tools is probably, let's take that as a 10-year vision. Um, um, and yet the you know, if in trying to respect local government's comprehensive plans as being resources that are transparent, if you will, vis-a-vis, oh, good, Kimberly's going to chime in here. Kimberly, keep going. I mean, please go ahead, Kimberly, because she has been implementing this in City of Salem, please.
Great. Yeah. Can you hear me? My
Yes.
camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my understanding of the way the rule works, as proposed is as Ed mentioned, it's through the land use process, but and Katie, like I think you're familiar probably with the above ground like designated historic resources, where on the front end a planner already knows those historically designated properties that are adopted as part of the goal 5 inventory, and then that's treated um, as it's described in whichever local code is adopted. But in this respect, the local jurisdiction would send notice, as it's described in the rule, to the tribes. And then through that notice, then they would receive information about known sites, but also about potentially significant sites. So it's a little bit more, I think it's a little bit more than just what's in Aura. So
Mhm.
that's my understanding of how it would work.
Mm-hmm. Right. Katie, go ahead. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you. We're trying to like not get too far in the rabbit hole on this. I guess what I would hope we could solve for, and I will talk with, my counterpart Glenn about this afterwards, but Metro in our urban growth management decision that happened at the end of last year for put in some conditions of approval and considering and encouraging the use of an inadvertent discovery plan and potentially doing some cultural resources due diligence activities so that the city of Sherwood could determine if those resources were present in the expansion area. I that to me felt like a unique process that Metro was requesting, um, as a part of the us responding as an agency to what we've been hearing from tribes we've been consulting about protecting archaeological resources in the greater Portland area. And I'm just wondering if a city across the state does not have access to their own archaeologists or contracted archaeologists, is there a way, like how can archaeological sites be referenced enough either in implementation guidance or like template letters that cities will send to tribes so that tribes can respond and do it exactly what Kimberly just said?
Mm-hmm.
And also that then that jurisdiction, when they receive that input from tribes, knows what is appropriate to go into the inventory and then knows what is appropriate to be managed confidentially internally so that both sets of resources can be considered in
Mm-hmm.
whatever land use process they're administering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that is the intent, is it would be through notice. I'm just hoping, in to Sarah's point too, to do a little bit more work on, okay, well, if the tribes aren't able to respond, is there another way a city could do due diligence without contacting SHPO? Or a property owner could do due diligence without contacting SHPO. So I think let's put definitely a pin in this, and we'll work through it over the next month or so, month and a half, 6 weeks before we need to turn in our packet for the December commission. So thank you. I'll circle up with John. Um, Alyssa, I don't trust that you'd have anything to add here. You would have put a hand up probably, but and I know you're not SHPO, but do you have any thoughts here? And no is okay. And then I'll turn to Gordon and see if he has any thoughts.
Yeah, nothing too much to add on the kind of situations generally about archaeological sites. I think I would just kind of echo folks's current thoughts in terms of it would be good to have some solution that's better than the current one, which it doesn't sound like we necessarily have, but I do think we have some tools that we can talk about implementing either broadly or on a case by case basis. So yeah, happy to be a part of those conversations, but unfortunately I don't have any brilliant solutions or extra knowledge that would fix this at the moment. Sorry.
No, thank you. And maybe local governments too on the line. Um, when 3A was in there, it'd been riding along since 2024. And it said so it says it's part of the state inventory. It says all archaeological sites are significant Goal 5 resources. It just proclaimed that, which they are. However, they're covered. They're either in aura, and that is, you need to have a certain licensing in archaeology to be able to see that database. Um, or they're, yeah. Um, I think full stop, because I think our definitions reference aura. Um, and then other sources of information, if it's not in aura, may be maintained by tribe. Did any local government have any concern with 3A as it was written, which was sort of an automatic, almost a safe harbor, but reference that all archaeological sites are significant Goal 5 resources? That is an add, sort of be a default add to a local inventory without local governments needing to update their inventories, but it just says that it draws that crosswalk. Did any local governments have any concern about that when it was in?
I don't know how to raise my hand.
There you go,
So,
Shauna. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Kimberly here. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shauna.
Okay, yeah, we got two. So let's go, Shauna, and then Kimberly. Thanks.
I wanted to follow Kimberly.
Okay, Kimberly, go ahead.
Oh, so, yes. So I had concerns primarily because of the owner consent law, ORS 197772, which is a law that's been primarily applied to above ground historic resources. But for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it requires the consent of the property owner to designate a local landmark. And I think that, and Ed, I would defer to you if you're familiar with this law and how that might apply here. But that's my concern about automatically listing it, because I don't think this has been tested with regards to archaeological sites yet.
May I respond?
Oh, sure, please, Ed. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. The rules make a differentiation between historic properties and cultural resource properties. It's possible they can be both. For historic properties, the owner consent law certainly applies, but that's not the case for most of the cultural resources. And you don't need to get a consent from the owner because it's not under the historic properties law. If they're both, you have to get consent. That's the way the rules are currently written.
Mhm. That's right. And I just want to make a point here too. In one of the public comment letters that we received that are online, I'll show you where those are. But the one commenter had noted that had suggested that an application could be done for a culturally significant landscape feature, which could be done without the knowledge of the property owner, which is not the case. These rules, because of the discussion here at the REC, we made sure that the local government notice requirements include the property owner. So I know this is a little bit of a subsection of case, but I wanted to just make that clear. And then regarding the historic resource rule, Amanda was noting earlier today that she does plan to move kind of that reference to the protection section in 5 rather than the inventory section in 3, to better mirror the historic preservation rules. So, Gordon, do you have anything to add on, it's a tough area because it's between land use and, archaeological protection, which hasn't traditionally been the purview at all and will not be under these rules. It's kind of between us and the SHPO statutes and rules. And without John here, we're one hand clapping. But Gordon, do you have any other thoughts on this matter of how folks would know of an archaeological site, even if we do state that they're significant resources, they're still covered?
Yeah, it's just a difficult situation with the need for public knowledge or records, public knowledge of an application. Um, by the way, if I sound funny, I had a crown put on this afternoon, so I'm a little bit
Great, thank you.
anyway, dental crown, not a head crown, but anyway, um, anyway, yeah, it, I don't know that there's a good way of doing this. I mean, I think that, my experience many, many years ago in California, especially larger local governments had professional archaeologists on staff to implement the California Environmental Quality Act. And they were professional archaeologists that had access to confidential databases, but they were bound by their professional obligations not to reveal that. That was allowed, and that's not the case in Oregon, unfortunately, because local governments generally don't have such kind of access to expertise like that, professional expertise. So it's a difficult situation, and I don't know that I have a good answer for it.
Great. Thank you, Gordon, and thanks for making it today after relative minor surgery. Jill and then Nicholas. Please, Jill.
I kind of raised this with Amanda a little bit. I didn't have a problem with actually removing the three, but I did have an area. I mean, I did raise an issue with um, more of the unknown areas and how those, when they're discovered, what do we do with them? Do they automatically become like part of an inventory? And so I had suggested an alternative definition that I sent to her about areas of archaeological concern, or maybe we do these by not like a point area that this is where the inventory is, but maybe a broader area so that you're not identifying the actual site. But I don't know. I mean, I didn't really have a problem with removing it. The only thing I ever worry about is if for some reason somebody didn't know and then we said it was automatically part of the inventory, and did we skip some sort of due process?
Good point, Jill. Thank you, Gordon, for your mulling there. Thank you. Nick, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is really a complete thought or not, but I don't necessarily have a problem with removing it either. But I guess I just wonder if just because it no longer says that explicitly, does it not also remain true somehow legally through other applications of rules and statutes and procedures? And so by removing it, we're creating an unnecessary ambiguity. Um, and I don't necessarily, we've been talking about this a long time. I would ask those with legal minds to potentially think that through, because just because it doesn't say it doesn't mean it's not true under some other legal framework. It seems like to me it is true. But so I don't know. I'll just leave it at that.
Right. I take your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some legal minds on. The only one we haven't heard from yet is Keenan. So I'm not sure if you want to venture an opinion here or not on removing 3A. That's a pop quiz and only an invitation, not a requirement, of course.
Yeah, I think I'm still thinking through this. I think I'm attacking it kind of from two angles here. One from a practical standpoint in terms of implementation, and then secondarily, obviously I represent the private development interests here, how that would impact my clients and the industry that I work in. So I'm still kind of thinking through it. Fine putting me on the spot. I just don't have a concrete answer for you right now.
No, good. We're all chewing on it. In definitely want to mark that we heard from Sarah that, it could be a deficiency to remove because it is part of the crosswalking between the two sets of rules. So maybe there's another treatment that we can call in here. And Shauna, I'm glad you're back. Please go ahead. Yeah, sorry about that. I lost you.
Wanted to jump in and I share sentiments that have been expressed about that. It'd be nice to have the additional clarity if there's another way of going about it other than removing it.
Yeah. Yeah. We keep that crosswalk in somehow. Good. Okay. Okay. Good one. Commission has been saying, our director has been clear that if we don't get it right the first time here, we can, come in and bring it back to commission. So please don't feel like if we don't feel like what we land on in December isn't quite right, it's a process that remains open for reopening. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for that, Katie. Thank you for starting the discussion on that. That was, if not conclusive, helpful to hear from folks. Just other things that we've done since July. I mentioned a series of workshops. Thank you so much to LOC and AOC for helping get the word out about those. We affirmed a later date. I mentioned that already. We finalized a flyer for local government implementation that actually Jill started. It's a well-loved document. And Jess, if you have a minute to put that in the chat, that would be great. We recently updated it with the recommended effective date, and certainly local governments can start to implement earlier. That would just be the latest to start to implement. And then we're considering a number of things, but I just wanted to call in with other potential change. We were able to meet with Brees and Kimberly, Gordon and Amanda here a couple days ago, and we're talking about where both are present. So this is, and Kimberly flagged this in her letter, that in 1 small b, we define cultural areas. The current rules are expressed that cultural areas means archaeological sites, comma, landscape features of cultural interest, comma, and sites where both are present. And Kimberly has convinced us that it's probably better to remove where both are present because of the way land use planners administer programs locally. So we are considering removing that where both are present. Brees had recommended it originally, so we wanted to circle back with him. But I think he agrees that for clarity, it doesn't mean it can't be true that landscape features of cultural interest may often have archaeological sites in them, but administratively, it might just be better to leave that definition clean, that it's archaeological sites and landscape features of cultural interest. So please feel free to provide written comment or weigh in here if you have opinions about that one. Oh, and Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't see your comment in the chat. Is the on the historic resources, I do believe, Sarah, that the Oregon definition is distinct from the federal definition, but I cannot give you a short version of that. I'd have to have Amanda or John here to describe. But Gordon, I'm not sure if you're somewhere you're at your computer, but there are rules for historic areas in the Oregon land use program in Goal 5 that are specific. And if you're at a computer and can put those in the chat, Gordon, that would be amazing. But no pressure if you
I'll
aren't.
take a look at that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry again, Kimberly again, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't use my hand. I put some in the chat. There
good.
is a historic resources definition in 200 in OAR 660-023-0200, which is the Goal 5. It's the administrative rules for the above ground that you guys worked on a few years ago.
Right.
But I would agree. I think Sarah does make a good point that it would be helpful to have a clear definition, but not just for our rule, across all.
Mm-hmm. I know there's a crosswalk in this rule. So it's in the section of relationship of cultural areas to standard Goal 5 process and other rules. So the current crosswalk is it's in small c. So it's linking to that administrative rule 0200 section 9. I see a flag here that it might need to be section 8, but it's linking back to the historic area rules, historic site. But Sarah, if you want to make a further point on historic site versus properties, I think we're defining sites and not properties. Okay. Not hearing anything. I'll keep going. Great. Yep. Yep. Good. And Gordon affirmed that Kimberly had already gotten in there. Okay. Thank you. And Matthew, thank you for advancing there. So I wanted to just share where we are posting all written comments received. So if folks want to write a letter or just submit via the form, there we post them on the commission's page associated with the September commission meeting, because that's when the hearing was. So have received 7 letters to date, or and Jill had written Community Development Director Rolfe and Community Development Director Housley Glover had written a joint letter in late July, early August, that was during the RAC period, but Jill asked us to resubmit it for the formal record here. So we've included number 4 there too. And I thank City of Portland, City of Salem for also weighing in, City of Coos Bay, Mr. John Polly. So thank you. And LPOA, Dave has written, I don't think he's here today. We'll give him a call to follow up, because I think there's a few things in his letter that still misunderstanding about who can bring an application and the limitation of culturally specifics to Oregon tribes to bring a landscape feature of cultural significance. So we'll follow up with Dave by phone. All right, next slide. And so preparing for implementation, we've been using version of this slide at the local government webinars, but we're hard at work, and Brett and Laura, who of DLCD's regional representatives who have extensive experience at local governments, are also helping us work on this first column here of templates. So information, we'll be working on templates, model language, support for Legislative Commission on Indian Service, and then guidance documents. Brett, are you feeling like you could come on and share what you're working on in this regard?
Sure, I can do that. So at this point in time, in addition to Laura Kelly, we also have Don Hurt, who is assisting on this effort as well. And we are looking at some guidance to be able to provide assistance with some of the notice provisions. And that's something that I'm going to be working on and have been working on. Don is working on some guidance in terms of how the local jurisdictions respond to that. And then Kelly or Laura has been working on issues dealing with more of the urban growth boundaries, and has been a great assistance to both Don and me on this. We're looking at some templates, wanting to be able to provide some maybe model language for the jurisdictions to be able to use. DLCD is working on some model code language for small communities, and looking to see how that could parlay into this work as well. And then also looking for some ways perhaps that jurisdictions can use for some of the notice requirements that I'm working on, to be able to have something that maybe an applicant could provide in their application materials to help expedite the process of notifying the tribes from that initial submittal of an application.
Thank you, thank you. And so we're crunching on a couple of things. We'd like to make sure that we have the templates, particularly for local government processes, available early next year. And if the rules pass on schedule in December, we'd look to have another webinar, perhaps co-hosted with LC and AOC again. We'll see if they're willing. But on these templates for local government, particularly for the notice requirements, for updating local code for notice requirements, so that anyone who comes in the city to work is working off the same page of what notice needs to be provided in what circumstances. And then another one, it's over on the housing rule side, which is still also open for comment until November 7th, but the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis process, those rules goes into effect January 1, 2026. And so we're sort of wanting to front load that urban growth boundary preliminary study area notice guidance under that process pretty quickly too. For local governments who are just starting the urban growth boundary expansions process would be if the draft rules do say that local governments would provide a notice to tribes at that preliminary study area phase. Here in these rules, we say the tribe should be noticed at the time of urban growth boundary expansion, but we know that's quite late in the process. So we're trying to back that up earlier. So those are the two pieces of guidance we hope to have available very early next year. Thank you, Brett, and thank you, Laura. Laura, anything else to say, to share or add about what you're working on?
No, as Brett mentioned, we're really focused, or we have been focused up to this point on the notice requirements and really getting that dialed in. And we have a meeting, I think next week, to start really diving into the significant cultural landscape features and the amendment process and what that all looks like. So we'll get to the point of having some model language that can go to local governments for them to modify procedures so that they can accept these applications.
Oh, great. Good, good, good. Laura, thank you. Really grateful for Dawn and Laura and Brett's support here. Amanda's working on that suite too. She's working particularly on, Amanda's working particularly on the notice that would go to at the counter on inadvertent discovery for just more broad information sharing about what happens in the case of inadvertent discovery. So I'll be working with Alyssa and LCIS on that. Mr. Hamburg, Glenn, sorry I missed you there. Please.
Yeah, thank you. This is something I can maybe follow up with staff offline. I'm just thinking about the definition of local government in 1D as including cities, counties, and metro. And I should spend a little bit more time thinking this through, but I just want to double check that metro, by way of this definition, isn't perhaps inadvertently being sucked into a process that was only meant to apply to cities and counties. It's very likely that we're not, but I'm just flagging that sort of myself to go through and make sure that where else local government is mentioned, that Metro isn't required to do something that really is only meant for cities and counties.
Right. No, that's fair. Good flag. Thank you. And the significance of Metro really comes in section 7 there too. But thank you. Thank you for looking into that and following up with Amanda. That would be perfect. Good. Okay. So those are things GLCD is working on, local governments in the local government implementation sort of open houses and webinars. We've been encouraging folks to emotionally prepare and we'll get some templates out to prepare for notice requirements that would go into effect a year from now, modifying their application forms as needed. Again, not required, but these are just technical assistance we're providing. And then preparing to integrate responses and including recommendations in permit decisions for local governments, and then preparing to receive applications for a culturally significant landscape feature. And then on the tribe side, please watch for director to chair letters, which will copy the tribal historic preservation officers and any other RAC members who aren't TIPOs, but looking to identify from tribal governments what areas of the state, what cities and counties for which they'd like to receive notice. And this is, again, completely voluntary for tribes. So if they do not wish to participate in this program, there's certainly no pressure. And then grateful to LCIS for helping collect and hold that information. We've been talking about an update and maybe an annual update on that, but really that's a really big function, a very small but mighty commission staff do. So Alyssa, thank you. Maybe we go to the next slide. And so we're rounding out here. So there's a rulemaking comment form that folks can use, very simple, to provide a comment or email a letter to the Goal 5 address or Casaria Taylor. Folks are used to emailing Casaria. She's been rulemaking coordinator here for a number of years. Matthew Hampton, who's running the slides today, actually filed these rules so that his name is on the SOS filing. And just a flag for folks, for local governments, if you'd like to join the webinar coming up on October 29th. That's sort of the closeout webinar. We'll go over some of the things we went over today, and that we've seen in the comment letters and that we've been hearing throughout the comment period. So that's just 2 days before the comment close. So kind of rounding out that public comment period. What do we have next, Matthew? That's it. So I think we just wanted to hear from folks. Shauna, please, before we head in there. Yeah.
I don't know when the right time, but it looks like we're moving on and closing.
Okay, we have time. Yeah.
I want to revisit a question that came up at the outset about the additional language that's been added, I think under 9B or A, about a local program adopted before January 1, 2025. In the spirit of looking closely at the terminology that's come up with the other issues that have been raised, I'd like to ask for some clarity about what's meant by archaeological and cultural resources. I just want to confirm what we're talking about there.
Right. In terms of a pre-existing notice program.
Or pre-existing protection program, a local program adopted prior to X date to protect archaeological and cultural resources. So in the instance of Lake County, we do have a program to protect archaeological resources. Those are going to be those resources that were identified in our inventory 40 years ago, which without tribal involvement. But we do have a process, but the term cultural resource is throwing me off. I don't know if that meaning is meant to be landscapes of culture. I mean,
It would be, right. I think, a straight read would be as defined in the rule, Shauna.
Okay. So that's going to be terminology from the rule. I'm just trying to figure out.
Right. If you would qualify there. Yeah. If Lane County would qualify there. Interesting. Yeah. Do you have notice provisions to tribes currently? So that's the intent of that 9A is if you have a notice provided where you're providing notice to tribes currently, do you have any in perhaps sort of an inventory? Yeah.
We do voluntarily. I think the statement's clear about providing the notice above. I could follow up, but I guess on that, we do, not like we want to, and the rule wants us yet. But they're specific to the archaeological resources.
Right, right. It would probably be both. Yeah, it would probably need to be both, but let's follow up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Jill, could I call you in to speak a little bit about the Coos County program, which really is unique it's unique. Each jurisdiction is unique. But Jill, do you mind speaking a little bit to your program and how it would achieve kind of notice and potential protection requirements for both archaeological and cultural resources?
Yeah, so for Coos County, we have two different provisions. One's under our Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan and Coquille River Estuary Management Plan, and the other is actually under our what we refer to as balance of county, so it's outside the estuary. Outside the estuary is based on Goal 5, but we do provide notice in a similar fashion as we do in the Coos Bay Estuary and the Coquille River Estuary. So basically, when we receive an application, we have 3 business days to forward to the tribe that application, and it's anywhere in that's in our estuary plan. And our estuary plan is not just the aquatic area, it also includes all of the shoreland area. And then there's a 30-day period to comment. And then we also have some shoreland areas that are around like our coastal lakes too that are similar, but they require a little bit more detailed plan as far as like showing cuts and fills and stuff that might impact more resources. And then outside, we still send the notice, but a lot of times we wait a little bit to send the notice because you don't have a very quality type application to send. And so we usually wait till it's more deemed complete time frame, unless it is just an allowed use. I mean, we send them for all of them. It doesn't matter whether it's a notice, whether we're sending a notice of decision or whether we're not. Anybody comes in, they want to do any ground disturbing. We look at the map if it's in an area, and our maps are very, very broad. They're not pinpoint specific to an actual, this is where it is. It's very broad, it's by sections. And so almost probably 60% of our county is going to require some sort of tribal notice. And then we give, again, the 30 days time period to comment. We take those comments and we integrate them in as part of our zoning authorization. So sometimes they'll request a 72-hour notice before digging so that somebody can be on site. Sometimes they'll say they don't think that this isn't anywhere near a site, but if it is, this is what you do. And so then we try to provide that information. And then we've had other projects that we know are in sensitive areas where you use the invert discovery plans. So we just have kind of a wide options of protections. And our estuary, it's actually not a goal under goal 5. It was adopted as part of the estuary goals. So
And that was in consultation with both tribes at the time?
yes.
Yeah.
Don Ivy was a big supporter, but we also had I lost his name, Bill Brainerd from Confederated Tribes. He was also on our planning commission. So we had representation from both tribes helping us with that language at the
Yeah,
time.
and that was 1986, which is great. So that was 40 years ago. It's great to see that this example of the sort of the intent, but it just wasn't, we didn't have it's incredible really that that the Coos County Comp Plan had that so early, yeah, I would have representatives from, I think both tribes are on the call today, but I can't even recall if they were restored at that time. So it's remarkable, remarkable engagement there in early comprehensive planning in Oregon.
So
Shauna,
the last mapping update we did, we also did in consultation with the tribe. The tribe actually did the maps for us, was in 2002. And, to Sarah's point, what she talked about earlier, we would like to have new data. It's just, it does come with certain expectations of what do you do to it, keep it private. So, I'm looking forward to figuring that part of this out.
Yeah, it's a real juggernaut. I think I just need to say for anyone who's listening now or in the future that the reason that those resources are covered is to protect against looting. So the minute you make them discoverable in a record, then folks go look for stuff. So that isn't theirs. So one of the reasons it's kind of hard to crosswalk the two.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jill. Shauna, please.
I had not realized I hadn't lowered my hand.
Okay.
But to keep this discussion on, one thing that we do with our notice too is we provide notice based on sections. So on our inventory, we'll have archaeological sites that are assigned a number and they track with the state system, and that's where they're maintained. But I suppose additional sites could be added at the state level or other level where there's some crosswalk between tribal inventories that just have a shared number and reference number and section. So they're not discoverable in the sense where they're individually they're identifiable to a particular property or location, but they do have a unique identifier.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Shauna. Interesting. Shana, excuse me, Sarah.
I think I've had this conversation, but it's probably been about a year. I am, and I know Jill and I have talked about this off and on for a couple of years. So I was glad to see her mention this. I am quite confident that we can develop technical solutions that will protect site data and let planning level people have access to the information they need to guide good decision making, because about 4 or 5 years ago, I built a system like that in the state of Washington. And so not only is it entirely technically possible, but I've already done it, and I'm happy to share with everyone about how we've already done it. Um, and I think there are some great models out there for ways that we can do this, and we can also, one of the other great things we can do, because we have so much better GIS than we did in 2002 or 1986, because we have access to those more advanced systems, we can also dial down significantly the number of false positives, which I think is something that people kind of look at today's systems. They look at these kind of first generation systems and they go, oh, but we're going to have to look at all these things. And the truth is that we do, and it is kind of a burden. But if we can tailor some of this a little more, and again, I'm confident we can do it because it's already been done in other fairly comparable jurisdictions. Um, we really can get that false positive rate down, and that just psychologically for a lot of people, that makes it a lot easier for them because they don't feel like they're one of the things, because the system that I started with that we rebuilt in Washington, it did give people the section level, and what that led to was that we just had staff who just ignored it. And they went, oh, it always says there's a problem, and there's never really a problem. And a couple of times we had really, really, really serious compliance issues that got exceptionally complex and expensive. And when I kind of after action the whole thing, it worked out that really a lot of what had happened was people had gotten a warning from the planning tool and they didn't take it very seriously because they went, oh, it's just like the other, 200 times that it said you're going to have a problem, and you didn't have a problem. So um, false negativing is a problem, but false positiving uh, is also a concern. But again, from a purely technical standpoint, I am really confident that we can build a system that would let municipal planners have a pretty good feeling for whether they were going to have a concern or not at a more fine-grained level than a section level, and without disclosing site locations in a way that would promote looting. So I am pretty sure that we can do this, and that will also let us tune it to a point where it will be less of a hassle, both for our tribal offices processing this and for small government offices, which, like us, don't have a ton of spare resources. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that. I was hoping we were going to do that this year, was those kind of nitty gritty, how are we going to build? I think Jill and I would both really like to tune up the 2002 maps someday here in beautiful Coos County. And I think we just both really want to get there. But that honestly, for me in my professional wheelhouse, I'm looking forward to that, and I think it's going to be a chance for us to problem solve on something that has been making a lot of us kind of nuts for, like, how could we do this for like 40 years? And we can totally fix this. Like, it's doable. So yeah, my confidence level is really high on that issue. I'm sure that we can get a good technical fix, and I'm happy to field questions on that. But I know I said this like 18 months ago, and some of the people who are in the rack now weren't in the rack then. So I just want to reassure you from a technical standpoint, we can 100% do that piece. We have the technology.
Yeah, no kidding, Sarah. And DLCD now has some additional GIS resources, which is great because we had a part of a person for 40 years ourselves. And now we do have, thanks to Governor Kotek's housing initiative, we have some additional resources that are obviously working hard to support Governor Kotek's housing initiatives, but did bring extra capacity. So I'd love to set up a meeting with you and JT. His name is Josh Tanner, and some members of that group, and also, Jill and anyone else who would like to kind of, you know, see a show and tell, Sarah, of what you built in Washington. I wonder if you would pair that with, would you keep the notice requirements though, do you think? Or would this be in lieu of notice requirements? What's your vision there?
Well, I think you would keep the notice requirement. She's just telling you wouldn't have as many notices, or you maybe would focus it in a very specific area, which would be very helpful because, by doing those broad sections, you're catching areas that don't have any kind of resource. And so, and we have that 30-day wait time, and that's usually the complaints we get. Well, it came back and they don't care, and we waited these 30 days. So I think that you could definitely set that out, but you would definitely want the notice requirements. And I think if you recall, I kind of said before, um, off record, that if we developed resources that made it easier for planners, then you're going to have a higher success rate, and whatever that is. I mean, we already do notices for Department of State lands, and so it's not that planning departments aren't used to already doing notices. It's just trying to make it easier.
Good. Well, good discussion to have. I'm always haunted by John Polly's reminder to us that only 20% of the state's been inventoried, and most of that is federal public land. So,
Well, and
so,
and
yeah,
that
yeah,
Kirsten is what makes it like super embarrassing when we miss one that we already knew about.
right. Right.
Um,
So this would be
which
of the
which
known.
is
This would be
is
of the
why
known.
we did some of the tool improvements that we did, because like we either ended up selling sites that we knew about, or buying. It was coming out of the real estate transactions thing for Washington State Trust lands, because we either ended up buying sites or selling sites, both of which were not fiscally desirable in any way for the agency. Yeah, I think Jill is exactly right. We would really want to keep in that noticing provision, but if we can, I think we can make it so that we want to reduce surprises for everybody. We want to reduce surprises at I don't want Jill to have a bad day at the planning counter, and she doesn't want me to have a bad day in my office. And we don't want our grandma who just wants to build a shed to, sometimes I am grandma who wants to build a shed, and so
Yeah.
like none of us want to have a bad day. And this is like the bad day reduction campaign here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. So Sarah, that would focus on known sites, but not to say that other sites couldn't exist. It would just focus on known sites. Yeah. That's one of my fears would be a false sense of security, but let's further investigate, whether or not that helps in addition to the notice requirement, in addition to the inadvertent discovery, like promotion of what to do with inadvertent discovery. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I hope to propose a policy option package to advance these rules and provide more support for local government. So fingers crossed there, but it's a long way off. Um, Kimberly, you have a question for John, I think, but I don't know that anyone's gonna be able to answer, but go ahead and put voice to your question, and then maybe Alyssa can.
Yeah, and it's probably about money, really, ultimately, isn't it? So, yeah, I too, I really appreciate all of Sarah's comments and her work. And I shared a link to our map in Salem, which is
Yes.
you can't see the sites, but but planners and property owners, developers are able to see if their area is an area of concern, and if they and it's really all about money and budgeting for contingencies so they can do the testing they need to. But my question is really, it would be so great if SHPO, and I know they have staffing and funding issues like everyone seems to have these days, could build the kind of map like we have in Salem, or it sounds like what Sarah built in Washington, so that planners could use that. So that's a dream.
For sure. Heritage Hub is the hope is alive and well. I do know that over at SHPO. Alyssa, please.
Yeah, I mean, certainly can't speak for SHPO. I know we've had recent conversations that suggest that the funding for Heritage Hub is, if not in hand, moving that way, and so that is the idea is to move it forward. And in terms of having a map, kind of similar to either Salem's or what Sarah did up in Washington. I know we had actually talked about, of course, there's a fly in my room, something similar or different approaches when we were dealing as well with some of the ODOT noticing requirements around working in ODOT right of ways, and having utility companies have a kind of need to understand where some of the areas of concerns are. And so I just wanted to say that has been, I think, in the broader conversation, and folks have talked about having some solutions through something like Heritage Hub, and kind of Sarah alluded to, we have a lot more tools now in GIS, including ways, and I was just looking at the one for Salem. There are ways of doing it where, again, we don't have to put any lines on a map. We could have either a map where you just click or you put in an address and it spits out kind of the level of concern or the guidance that needs to be followed. And that's not that difficult to do, kind of to translate those two things, given the current GIS tools. So not really offering any new information other than to your point, Kimberly, I think it is something that many of us would like to see in Heritage Hub. I think, there's a few other things we need to get into Heritage Hub first, probably before we get to this level, but it shouldn't be that difficult of a tool. And it would be great to have, again, these are concerns that are not just unique to the ODOT right of way or, local governments. It's, I think, a tool that would be really great to have for multiple different applications. So yeah, so I think there's lots of interest in developing something like this down the road. I think, again, it's probably at least 5 years out for anything that would truly be functional, and something that has been, well consulted on,
Right.
both kind of from a technical and an ethical perspective. So
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll lean into what John and State Parks has, because they are the ideal. So Kimberly, thanks for the question, and Sarah for bringing that back. We'll keep that dream alive, and I think, Sarah, have you demoed that for John, what you did in Washington? Is he familiar?
John Pauly?
Yeah.
Yeah. He and I have had some conversation, and I got the guy who did the GIS programming, because it's part of a larger tool that you put in a shape file and it spits out for you an Excel spreadsheet, because everyone in the government loves Excel spreadsheets.
We do.
It spits out an Excel spreadsheet that basically says, here are all of the environmental constraints that we are aware of going in. It's a due diligence exercise. Here's all the known knowns. And here's the contact information for who you need to call in this area. And boy, that was a huge help to our land managers and our planners and all those people who, there was one me in the agency, but there were hundreds of those folks. And just trying to leverage that and say, here's when you need to call. And then we're going to go from there on solutions. So you don't even need to necessarily say, here's the solution, but you need to give people, here's your next step, here's your toolbox. And we were able to, and again, because the output it's an Excel spreadsheet, it's not a cartographic product. You're really not outputting a site locational data set. You're outputting, here's who to talk to, here's who your resource is. So whether that's in this case, we'd have to do some workshopping on who those people would be. Is that going to be tribes? Is that going to be SHPO? Is that going to be a local government archaeologist for those organizations or places that have that? And we could build it so it varies too. And so that we're really, because I've heard today, like, concerns from Metro about, well, does Metro really fit in this box? And that's the nice thing. We don't have to make boxes. We can make like a bunch of squashy sacks.
Yeah.
You know, we have the technology to really squish this around in a way that works for everybody's particular considerations and also really, you know, again, reduces those surprises for everybody.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's good. Go ahead, Jill, please.
Kirsten, we're working, I don't know if you're familiar with Urban Form. It's a mapping tool. And we received some funding to bring that in, but it's kind of similar to kind of what Sarah's describing, except you would click on a property and it would tell you these are the overlays that apply to it. And it gives you a
Hmm.
report and it tells you who you're supposed to contact.
Right. Yeah.
It's similar to that. And I think and then, you know, we're just at the beginnings of having this urban forum platform, and it'll be a little while before we're up and going, but it sounds like this could be something we integrate into that.
Mm. Right. No, I see the parallel up here we have, I think it's PDX maps or something, but you can find a lot of information just clicking on any one property. In terms of the overlay zone, this says, I don't think Portland's has, Nick can correct me, but I don't think it has, you know, who to talk to in any game, because I don't think there's that broad cultural resource overlay that you have, Jill, but super helpful database. Well, let's keep talking about that. I do want to give folks an opportunity for closing thoughts, and I'm going to call on folks, so please feel free to get ready to give a thought. It's even those who haven't said anything yet today, Rules Advisory Committee members. I will want to welcome Amanda. She was called off to participate in an interview during our first hour, and there was quite a bit of conversation, Amanda, on 3A, whether or not to remove and if there's a better crosswalk. Ed was on for a bit and has some thoughts, but had to go teach. So quite a bit of conversation on 3A that we can fill you in on. But if it's okay, before we ask Commissioner Thompson to round us out, if I can just go down the alphabetical list here from participants and ask Rulemaking Advisory Committee members, if you have is there anything else that would help you comply with the rules, understand the rules? Any warnings for us? We would appreciate hearing about it. So I'll turn first, if that's okay, to Alexandra.
I always end up being first. It's very hard to get a name higher up in the alphabet than Alexandra. I am still working with a lot of our planners to make sure that I've covered all of their concerns. I think a lot of the conversation here today, you know, has helped clarify that, and a lot of you have hit on similar issues that I've heard. So this gives me a lot of good things to bring back to them. Of course, we have that final local governments thing, making sure all of my members have all of their little questions ready for you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's really it for cities. I think I've seen, you know, questions around the notices, and I think I've gotten all of those kinds of answered. It's like, what happens if no one responds? All of those kinds of questions that you
Yeah.
get from, you know, your really tiny towns who have this like,
Yes.
you know, part-time city manager, part-time planner sometimes.
Yes.
So I think it's done well in balancing, you know, we do not necessarily have cities with the most capacity. Some are much more capacity than others. Yeah, that's what I got for you.
Alexandra, that's great. That's a great FAQ if what happens if no one responds. So thank you. That's it. That is a frequently asked questions, and so make sure that to build that into the guidance document so it's clear too. Thank you. Good. Good. Ms. Miller, can we hear from Carrie? Are you able to come off mute or from triple tasking?
I am here. Thank you. A lot of thoughts were brought to the table today. Some of them I need to continue to think about, you know, when we're talking about removing where both are present, what does that mean when they both are going to be present? Does that change anything? Because will be many times when both are present. And so I don't understand the ramifications yet, but that just may be me kind of digging into the language and trying to understand what that means. What I also heard a little today was about sending those notifications out to tribes and wanting to hear back. And I guess I still have the expectation that those notices are going to go out to the state so that SHPO can, or right, they're understaffed, but like somebody is looking at Aura and you're not solely depending upon the tribes to do your Aura work. Well, we will, but we know the goal of reaching out to the tribes too is to get those other sites that aren't in Aura. Those places on the cultural landscape, those other places that we know about that haven't been formally documented. I just don't want us to we will, but shoulder all of it, like, or if we miss some, right? That there should be hopefully somebody at the state at SHPO looking at or if some of the local governments somehow can get somebody qualified, hire a contractor now and then I don't know, right? I don't know the answer. It's a tough one, right? But to have somebody qualified that can do that work. So how can we tighten that up and make it more feasible for folks, right? We tribes are going to do our best. We want these resources protected, you know, the tribal resources that aren't in Aura and the ones in Aura. So those are the types of thoughts that are running through my head, trying to understand the different language changes and how these processes are going to be implemented and how we can work to give appropriate feedback, get people the information that they need, you know, in these processes. So
Good. Thank you.
thank you.
Carrie, thank you. Good. I think, Carrie, so I'm called to sort of wanting to point out there's a part in here that SHPO actually is asked us in their letters on our site, and or I could just simply share it to you. I guess maybe this is in the Metro UTB section. Okay. There's a part that would come out that John has requested to come out, which is consistent with SHPO's direction. Because as understaffed as they are, it is hard for them to respond to everything. So we're talking about, I think a lot of us have been talking today about what that gap is between um, having a qualified archaeologist to look at the database versus relying on the tribes, and that's a big burden for the tribes. So there's a middle there that we haven't been able to solve for resource wise yet. But thank you. Could we hear from Courtney? Any thoughts from Confederate Tribes of Kusama Amkwans Indians?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, just kind of the thoughts and notes that I was taking throughout the meeting is really similar to what Carrie just expressed. That, you know, while SHPO is understaffed, a lot of tribes are also understaffed, and having the ability to respond to all of these permits can be quite a burden. While, you know, it is what we're asking for, we want to be notified, we want to be able to protect the resource, but just having some grace with that, you know, sometimes we really can't get to things within that 30-day time frame. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't care about the resource that might be there.
Right. Thank you. Perfect. I appreciate that caution. Right. And on the other side too, helping provide that front-facing notice of inadvertent discovery to every applicant for ground disturbing activity, hopefully will help get that information, proactive information out too, so folks are better sensitized, but there's still that delta of who can help identify and who can help with that response, the capacity constraint. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Could we hear from Alyssa? So, Dr. Bullion, any final comments?
Amanda has her hand up, so I'll
sorry,
let her
Amanda.
go
Yeah,
first.
thank you. I'm looking at the list. So thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Sorry that I missed the first part of the meeting. I will listen to the recording. Just the 30-day window. Remember that, you know, the local government sending out the notice before they've deemed the application complete. They have up to 30 days to deem the application complete. They might be quicker than that, but really the window is then kind of becomes the public comment window, which will probably add more days than 30 days for a tribe if they have a concern to get that information into the record of the application review.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there someone else with a hand up, or is that it? Okay. You guys, thank you for helping me look at that. Keenan, Any final thoughts or cautions, please? I know you have so much you have to share.
Yeah, so I spent the latter half of the meeting kind of taking a look at the rule again and the 3A question, trying to see if there's a better way we can frame a crosswalk. I'm definitely going to be submitting a written comment on that. So that's really going to kind of contain the substance of my comments. Otherwise, I don't want to sound like a broken record because we've been doing this for 2 years, but I really think we have done a very good job of balancing the intersection of obviously wanting to preserve not only the resources themselves, but the privacy of their locations, and the practical implementation considerations for local governments and for the private developers, and just frankly, anyone who wants to build a shed on their property. So I think that it's going to be important to stay engaged in terms of how the rule actually is implemented and how it does impact things going forward. We truly won't know until that happens. That said, I think we've made a lot of really good progress here, and looking forward to the next couple of weeks.
Sir, thanks in advance for any written thoughts you have. Thank you, appreciate it. Um, Dr. Housley Clever has joined us. Kelly, please, any thoughts from you? And I should say, Kelly, I forgot to share with the group that we have heard in our rules that we could make more explicit that the Columbia River Gorge scenic area protections come first. And then these rules apply. So that's another change I forgot to mention that we want to make. Please, Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Director. I don't have any feedback today. I just appreciate the process and getting the opportunity to participate. And thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on for a bit there at the end from Wasco County. Michelle, please, from ODOT.
I'll just mimic, kind of what I heard. Appreciate the involvement and watching this develop and gaining a better understanding on the ODOT side of the house. Really, I'm liaising with our ARCI units and our planning units, and it's about implementation for us. And how is that, going to work? Most of our stuff from the ODOT side, we're under the federal nexus. So that's kind of it's addressed here, but it's a different part of the conversation. And then obviously the aggregate resources, especially with ODOT's budget problems, aggregate resources came front and center on the legislative discussion and debate too. And so I'm just really thankful to have been included, and a lot of hard work has obviously gone into this, and I appreciate it.
Michelle, thank you.
Yeah.
I think this is like, it's never over learning
No.
process. So thank you for staying with us. Nicholas, please. Another one who's been with us for the duration.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thanks to staff and the group. It's been great. Learned a lot. Like others, I think, we're going to be figuring out this at the city as we go along. And I guess as far as your sort of request for like how you can help, and maybe we can help each other is what I'm thinking about. Like, so as we are developing systems and programs and so forth, I'd like to be able to, I'd ask if maybe we can create some way of keeping this group in touch and be resources to each other. So as we're facing these things and something comes up, that we can help each other sort of do this as best we can. So that's one thought. And then just another, just remembering back to the beginning, the staff expressing that, we're not going to get this right the first time necessarily, and just want to remind us of all of that, and that we might, and, hold you to that, DLCD, that we might need to fix something. And so let's all help make sure that we're tracking what works and what doesn't work, and be ready to improve as we go forward. And so that's what I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicholas. I really appreciate that. We definitely need each other, state and local, on this. Can't stress that enough. Sarah, any other thoughts? You've shared some really important points today.
No, I think I'm covered, and I'm certainly happy to be a resource. I'm only back at work. As some of you know, I got run into by a car earlier this year, and so I'm now back part-time. But this is, I think you can tell, is one of those things that's near and dear to my heart, both from a technical standpoint and as somebody who's worked in Oregon municipal planning off and on for 20 years. We haven't landed this, but I am really confident that we could, in a way that would be good for everybody. Yeah, please do let me know if I can be of assistance.
Will do, Sarah. Thank you. And thank you for joining as you've been able, and so glad you survived the impact. Please take care. Shauna, any final thoughts from Lane County, please? Where is that unmute button? You are muted, my friend. Still muted. There you go.
Got away.
Yep.
We really appreciate this opportunity and are excited about this work. I'm personally heartened about the conversation today. I love that DLCD is looking at opportunities to help provide additional guidance, and I'm particularly appreciative of the perhaps openness to even looking at the specifics of rules with the notice requirements and how to make those as most effective and resource efficient as possible for all interests involved. I think they will be helpful.
Great. Shauna, thank you. Thanks for being with us throughout this year. Great. And then I think that's it. I think that's it for Rulemaking Advisory Committee members. Did I miss anybody?
Oh, me, Kimberly.
Kimberly, I am so sorry. Please go ahead. Thank you.
I'll try to be quick. I know we're running late.
And Katie, I missed my K's. Thank
Oh.
you. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to say, extend my deepest thanks to you, Kirsten and Amanda, for all of your hard work, and future thanks. Well, you guys have already been doing work to Brett and Dawn, and I'm sorry, I'm missing someone. Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing the next step, which is the implementation. And I think that, just like Sarah, this whole project is near and dear to my heart. And I agree also with what Nick shared about how this is an important first step. And I think that we'll have some fits and starts, but I hope this group can stay together. I did want to say one thing, and that's in the spirit of collaborating and sharing resources. The Heritage Commission is currently updating their plan. They have a heritage plan, and I know that because I take advantage of it, they offer grants to local governments. And I, as I do, wrote a letter suggesting that they create a grant to help support local governments in developing code or updating their local plan to help them implement this. I know that lots of folks are stretched thin, as we've heard from multiple folks today. So I don't know off the top of my head of any other sources for local governments other than the Certified Local Government Grant, which, of course, because that's HPF funds, may be at risk. So if you guys also can start thinking about, in the implementation phase, sources of funding for local governments to help them. That's my only other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not sure anybody put in this year, but our every 2 years, our planning technical assistance grants can be a source as well. So those are just turned in, and we'll see if anyone applied this year, but we'll push that back out next year actually, sorry, 2 years when we have the refresh the next biennium, but that's a source too. It's a small source. Those usually range around $50,000 to $70,000, but it can at least get someone started. Kimberly, thank you. Katie, would you care to give us any final words of wisdom or thoughts?
Thank you. I really want to echo what other commission members have said, especially Carrie, about the impacts and role of tribes to be the responsible party to potentially need to bring forward information about recorded archaeological sites. and also what Sarah had shared about using technology to help ourselves solve this. We at Metro have had the opportunity to see the really great tool that Kimberly has at the City of Salem, and I think that that could be something that could be very helpful to folks across the state if we could figure out how to puzzle together making that and finding the funding to do that. I guess the other point of clarification and the additional work that you and your team will be doing that I think would be helpful is for a non-Oregon based government who is going to petition an Oregon based government to make an application or a nomination on their behalf. Having some sort of rules or guidance about how the local government that is being petitioned should consider that, and whether or not there should be some standardization so that like a group doesn't have one experience in Benton County and then have a totally different experience in Multnomah County. And I would be interested to know like if it were a non-Oregon based tribe and they had asked several parties, local Oregon based governments who all said no, do they have access to any recourse? If they have asked everybody that they can ask, those parties have declined, and there still is a legitimate cultural landscape that should be recorded on an inventory that should benefit from the protections that go along with that, and what process do they utilize to pursue that?
Good, good, thank you. It gives us some homework for a guidance document in that regard. Katie, thank you. And I have some ideas, but thank you. That's a good homework. You guys, thank you. I little tiny facilitator's privilege and then hand it over to Commissioner Thompson to really close us out. But there's no project without Amanda Benton here. So Amanda, thank you. Just had to put up with me this whole time. You want to say anything to close us out, Amanda?
Do I want to say anything? I guess I'm just not in a closeout mindset, so I'm not good for chiming in here.
Just midstream.
We're still running. We're still trying to make this happen. So yeah, I appreciate everyone's support, and yeah, stay tuned.
Awesome. Thank you. And Commissioner Thompson, please last words if you would.
Yeah, stay tuned. We've had a lovely garden party today, haven't we? We've looked at the territory, we've looked at the processes. In my mind, most importantly, we've just started describing the tools in a way that is extremely reality oriented. I'm reminded of Dogami because they had LiDAR and could develop maps so somebody could put in an address and then go ahead and get relevant information about the level of risk or the reality under the ground. I would long for a similar tool to be available to address that other 80% of Oregon that isn't yet mapped. I don't know if Sarah has a magic access to tools, but if she does, or if we can, we want to move forward. We will be moving forward. As Nick said, we want to be moving forward together. So I'm really grateful. Staff, what a joy to work with, but all of the members, this is a beautiful example of what collaboration can be like. It's really a joy and an honor to be associated with you. We'll see you in September, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, December, but yes.
Sorry, December. Yeah, that month, December.
And probably the following September. But thank you, everybody. And we will continue to convene this group in the new year around implementation. Probably a webinar really early on about the first tools, probably midsummer, and then again in the fall, as we have responses from tribes. And then probably a special feature just on mapping. So Kimberly and Sarah will take you up on your offer to share, possibly Jill, with the mapping tool that you guys are developing. Yeah, let's keep it going. Thank you, everybody.